In a world that rewards visibility but forgets value, many are seen but few are remembered. Today, I won't teach you how to be liked. I'll teach you how to be valued. Because when you know your worth, you stop offering distance. Perception is everything. Before people respect your presence, they respond to your presentation. Before they hear your voice, they read your posture. Before they know your purpose, they feel your energy. You are being interpreted before you're ever introduced. So the question becomes, what are you saying even when you're silent? The truth is, people don't treat you based on who you are. They treat you based on how they see you. And if how they see you is casual, common, replaceable, then your value, your space, your presence will be treated like a convenience, not a necessity. This is why perception must be intentionally crafted. You must stop walking into rooms hoping to be accepted and start walking in prepared to be respected. Your image, your words, your tone, your silence, your walk, they're all part of a message. And hear me clearly, luxury is always sending a message, even without words. Luxury doesn't beg, it doesn't explain, it doesn't compete. Luxury position. And how you position yourself is how the world will place you. Are you placing yourself as optional or essential, temporary or timeless? People pay for value, but they chase what they perceive as luxury. Not because it's just expensive, but because it's exclusive. It doesn't show up everywhere. It doesn't try to be liked by everyone. It's not screaming for attention. It's quietly commanding respect. You must understand, you teach people how to treat you, not with your words, but with your standards. Your boundaries are a reflection of your brand, your time, your presence, your response. All of it speaks. So what is it saying? When you shift your self-perception, you shift your public reception. And when your presence is understood as power, people stop handling you like an afterthought. You don't need to force value, you need to frame it. Start walking like your name has weight. Start showing up like your presence is a privilege, not a favor. Let your silence make noise, and your standards make statements. People don't just invest in products, they invest in perception. They invest in the way something makes them feel. So if you want to stop being treated like an option, then you must stop presenting yourself like one. Because once the world sees you as a luxury, they'll think twice before risking your absence. They'll pause before mishandling you. They'll measure others against you. But here's the real secret. Perception is just the beginning. You've adjusted how they see you, but what happens when your mindset matches your image? That is where the transformation begins. Let's talk about that next. Luxury is not a label, it's a mindset. You can wear gold, speak well, dress sharp, post the best pictures. But if your mind is still operating at the level of survival, you'll never elevate into the space of exclusivity. You can't look like luxury, but think like convenience. It just doesn't match. Everything about a luxury brand starts in the mind. It's not about being better than others. It's about being clearer about who you are. It's not about being more expensive. It's about being more defined. You must know your difference, because your difference is your distinction. And distinction is the birthplace of exclusivity. You don't become exclusive by doing what everyone else does. You don't become luxury by fitting in. Luxury doesn't conform, it sets the bar. It doesn't chase, it attracts. Why? Because it understands its identity, and it refuses to compromise it for attention. If you're still thinking like someone who needs permission to be seen, you're not ready to be perceived as a necessity. You've got to shift from waiting to be chosen to choosing yourself, from seeking validation to standing in clarity. Luxury brands aren't everywhere, and that's what makes them desired. You don't see them on every shelf. They're not trying to be accessible. They're not designed for everyone, and neither are you. When you understand your exclusivity, you stop saying yes to everything. You stop responding to every call. You stop showing up in every conversation. You realize just because you're available doesn't mean you're accessible. Let that sink in. Availability is an accessibility is a decision. Luxury decides, and so must you. You've got to discipline your time, protect your peace, filter your environments. You can't carry the energy of excellence while dwelling in the company of chaos. You must become selective, not because you're arrogant, but because you're aware. Aware of your value, aware of your purpose, aware of the energy it takes to maintain your standard. Because here's the truth, you don't rise to luxury by chance. You elevate into it through intentionality. You build it with every decision, every habit, every no that protects your bigger yes. So if you're tired of being overlooked, if you're done being treated like a backup plan, it's time to stop operating like a product on clearance and start positioning yourself like a brand in demand. But what happens when you're so aligned with your purpose that your value becomes undeniable? What happens when you stop chasing recognition and become the standard by which others are measured? That is where we're going next. If they can negotiate your worth, they've already reduced your value. Let that sit for a moment. Because in a world where people constantly try to get more while giving less, you must become unshakable in your value. You must stop placing your worth on the table like it's up for discussion. You don't debate value, you demonstrate it. Luxury doesn't argue about price, it sets. It doesn't explain why it's expensive, it simply exists in its worth. The moment you start trying to justify your value, you've already given someone the power to discount it. People will always try to get a premium experience at a budget cost. But here's the truth. What is truly valuable never begs to be understood. It simply remains, and those who recognize it rise to meet it. Your time, your energy, your presence, these are not free samples. They're not buy one get one. They are currents, and the more you respect your own value, the less you'll tolerate spaces that treat you like you're common. Don't be afraid to be too expensive for some rooms. That's how you know you're in the process of elevation, because value repels what isn't ready for it. You don't belong where you're tolerated, you belong where you're valued. Ask yourself, what have you been tolerating that's been quietly lowering your price tag? What conversations, what connections, what environments have been treating you like you're optional, while you keep showing up like you need to prove something? Let this be your turning point. Your value is not tied to how much people like you, follow you, or agree with you. It's tied to your identity, your assignment, your standard. And once you truly know your worth, you'll never again feel the need to defend it. You see, luxury brands don't adjust their value to meet the masses. The masses adjust themselves to meet the brand. That's the power of knowing who you are. That's what makes you not just desirable, but essential. And let's be clear, there is a difference between being popular and being powerful. Popularity is voted on, power is recognized. When you operate from a place of undeniable value, you stop auditioning for rooms you were born to own. So from this moment forward, no more apologies for being too much. No more shrinking to make others comfortable. No more deals, discounts, or debates about your value. Because when you truly understand your worth, you realize you don't need to chase, you need to choose. But what happens when your presence doesn't just reflect value, it radiates authority? What happens when the way you enter a room changes the atmosphere of it? That is what comes next. Let me ask you something. Do they notice when you enter, or only when you leave? Because true presence doesn't beg for attention, it commands it. Not with noise, not with flash, but with substance, with clarity, with quiet confidence that doesn't need to be seen, but can never be ignored. See, popularity is loud. It chases crowds. It seeks approval. It lives off applause. But presence doesn't chase anything. Presence arrives. It doesn't try to be everything to everyone. It becomes exactly what is needed, where it's needed, and when it's needed. You don't need to be known by everyone. You need to be remembered by the right ones. That's the difference between being a trend and being a standard. Trends come and go, but standards set the tone for everything else. You must stop trying to perform for attention. You're not on stage, you're on assignment. And when you walk in that truth, your presence starts to do what words never could. You don't have to speak first, because your posture already said enough. You don't have to explain your value, because the atmosphere shifts when you show up. Presence is not just about how you look, it's about how you carry what you know. It's your body language, your tone, your timing, your stillness, and yes, even your silence, because sometimes your silence speaks louder than your status ever will. Luxury doesn't move fast, it doesn't rush, it moves with intent, and that's what gives it power. That's what gives it presence. It takes up space without asking permission, because it already knows it belongs there. Let this be your reminder. You don't need more followers, you need more focus. You don't need more applause, you need more alignment, because when you're in alignment, your presence speaks in rooms your words never could. Popularity fades, but presence echoes. And if you're going to be seen as a luxury, you must understand this. True influence doesn't need a spotlight, it is the spotlight. It doesn't wait to be invited, it becomes unavoidable. So here's the real question. Are you trying to be liked? Or are you training them to listen? Are you chasing recognition or building reputation? Because once your presence is felt, once your name carries weight, once your identity is anchored, you no longer show up to be seen, you show up to shift. But what happens when your purpose becomes the source of that presence? What happens when everything you do is rooted in why you were designed? That's where we're going next. Purpose is the birthplace of prestige. When you understand why you're here, what you carry, and who you are called to be, you stop trying to fit in and you start standing out. Purpose is what separates the necessary from the optional. It's what makes your presence strategic, not accidental. The moment you align with purpose, you become undeniable, because purpose produces clarity, and clarity produces confidence, not arrogance, not ego, but the kind of confidence that says, I don't need to compete, I know why I'm here. Luxury is never random, it's intentional, and your life, your gift, your presence, must carry that same intention. You're not just someone filling space, you're someone fulfilling assignment. And once you're clear on your assignment, you stop chasing attention, because you've already been assigned to impact. You can't be luxury while living in confusion. You can't be a brand of excellence while walking without direction. Purpose gives you structure, it gives your yes power, and your no authority. Because when you know what you're called to do, you're not distracted by every opportunity that shows up looking shiny. That's why some people can't understand your moves, because they don't understand your mission. But here's the truth. You don't need everyone to understand you. You just need to understand yourself. Because once you do, you become a force, a presence, a necessity. Think about it. Have you ever seen a luxury brand trying to be like everybody else? No, it's not trying to blend in. It was built to stand alone. Why? Because it's rooted in purpose. Its identity is clear, and when identity is clear, your impact becomes precise. So stop looking at others for your blueprint. Stop copying movements that weren't meant for you. Stop imitating people who don't even know their own purpose. You were not created to mirror, you were created to manifest. Your purpose is your path, your power, your platform. When you walk in purpose, doors open that effort alone could never unlock. Opportunities find you. People are drawn to you, not because you're chasing, but because you're aligned. And alignment is attractive, because it produces consistency, and consistency builds credibility. So if you're tired of being overlooked, if you're done being treated like an extra in someone else's story, it's time to walk in the full weight of your assignment. Because once purpose becomes your foundation, you're no longer just present, you're positioned. But now what happens when you stop explaining your value altogether? What happens when your absence speaks louder than your presence? That's where we go next. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing at all. In a world addicted to noise, to comments, to constant presence, silence has become a rare currency. But hear this, when used with wisdom, silence doesn't weaken your value, it multiplies it. Because what people can't access easily, they begin to desire deeply. You were never meant to be constantly available. Constant access kills curiosity. Constant presence breeds comfort, and comfort leads to complacency. If people see you everywhere, all the time, without boundaries, without distance, they start assuming you'll always be there. But silence creates distance, and distance creates demand. It's not about being mysterious, it's about being intentional. It's about understanding that your absence has just as much power as your presence, sometimes more, because silence gives people time to reflect on your value, to miss your insight, to feel the weight of your absence. Luxury knows how to disappear on purpose. It doesn't overshare, it doesn't overexpose, it doesn't need to update you every 5 minutes. Why? Because it understands this simple truth. When you are always talking, they stop listening. Don't let noise dilute your influence. You don't need to respond to every opinion. You don't need to explain every move. You don't need to clap back at every voice. Silence signals security. Silence tells the room, I know who I am. I don't need to prove it. You see, luxury doesn't chase relevance. It defines it. And that only happens when you move with discipline. Learn to protect your energy. Learn when to exit the room. Not with drama, not with noise, but with grace and strategy. There is a difference between being forgotten and being missed. You must know the right time to speak and the perfect time to step back. Because every time you speak, you spend energy. Every time you show up, you offer a piece of your essence. So why keep pouring where you're not being valued? Let your absence sharpen their memory. Let your silence become your strategy. The less they hear from you, the more they lean in when you do speak. Because when you speak less, your words weigh more. When you appear less, your presence gains power. And when they no longer take you for granted, they begin to guard your space, protect your presence, and pursue your value. But now, here's the real question. What happens when your positioning becomes so precise that you no longer need to compete at all? What happens when you become the only option in a category all by yourself? That's exactly where we're going next.
Listen carefully, because this is where many people go wrong. They compete, but they don't position. Competing is about trying to outdo others, trying to outshine the crowd, trying to stand out in a sea of options. But positioning is a whole different game. It's not about being better than anyone else. It's about being distinct, about creating a space that only you can occupy. It's about placing yourself in the minds of others as the only choice that matters. You see, competition forces you to react to what others are doing. It makes you focus on what's outside of you. It pulls you into the frenzy of comparison. But when you position yourself, when you know who you are, what you offer, and the value you bring, you don't need to look at others. You define your space. You set the rule. You don't need to follow trends because you're already setting them. Positioning is luxury in action. It's the art of saying, I don't need to fight for space. I don't need to be like everyone else. I simply need to be me, and the world will adjust. Think about any luxury brand. They don't fight for shelf space. They don't drop their price to gain attention. They don't join the noise of the market. They stand in their value, unapologetically, and they allow others to recognize that value. And when they do, people seek them out because they know what they stand for. You must do the same. Stop jumping into every conversation. Stop chasing every opportunity. Stop overexposing yourself to get noticed. Instead, start positioning yourself so clearly, so confidently, that when people look for what you offer, they can't imagine finding it anywhere else. The key to positioning is to know your uniqueness, your purpose, because once you know that, no one can replace you. You stop being one of the many and start being the only one. That's how you become indispensable. So let me ask you, are you positioning yourself, or are you just reacting to the world around you? Are you waiting for permission to be seen, or are you walking in the full authority of your purpose? The world needs what you carry, but it only values it when you position yourself as irreplaceable. It's not about the noise you make, it's about the space you command. And here's the powerful truth. The more you position yourself in alignment with your purpose, the more your presence will speak louder than any action you take. people will no longer wonder if they should pay attention to you. They will be compelled to listen. They'll be drawn to you because your value is clear, your uniqueness is undeniable, and your purpose is unshakable. So stop competing, stop trying to outrun the crowd. It's time to stand still, stand tall, and stand firm in the value you bring. Now, what happens when you stop just positioning yourself and start positioning others around you? What happens when your influence becomes so profound, it transforms the very space you occupy? That's exactly what we'll explore next. Let's get something straight. Influence is the new currency. And when you understand this truth, everything changes, because it's not the money you make that determines your value, it's the impact you have. It's not how much you collect, but how much you contribute. When you build influence, you stop selling your time for a paycheck. Instead, you create systems, platforms, and legacies that generate value long after you've left the room. Influence doesn't expire, it doesn't have a shelf life. When you create impact, your worth becomes exponential, because people don't just remember what you did, they remember how you made them feel. Think about it. The richest people in the world aren't just collecting wealth, they're collecting people. They're building influence through relationships, through ideas, through movements. They don't just create businesses, they create legacies. And a legacy outlives money, a legacy outlives time. You don't need to be a millionaire to be a millionaire in influence. The question isn't, how much do I have in my bank account? The question is, how much power do I have in my presence? How many people have I impacted? How many lives have I touched? You see, when you're driven by impact, your value increases, because people are at the center of it all. People aren't just products you use, they are the currency you collect. Influence comes from understanding that what you give to others will always come back to you, multiplied. When you provide value to the people around you, you position yourself as a source of influence. And the greatest influence doesn't have to be loud. It doesn't need a megaphone. In fact, the most powerful influences are often the most quiet. They understand that true influence doesn't rely on how much you say, but on how much you do. It's not about gaining followers, it's about creating leaders. Influence isn't about being adored or praised, it's about being trusted. Influence comes from being authentic, reliable, and consistent. It comes from having a vision that people can believe in, and a track record of delivering on that vision. So here's the real question. If your income was stripped away tomorrow, would you still have influence? Would people still listen to your ideas, follow your example, and want to be around you? That's the power of true influence. And when you build it, you no longer need to chase money, because money will chase you. Let me tell you this, influence is magnetic. It pulls people in, it brings opportunities, and it generates the kind of results money can't buy. You stop begging for attention, and you start attracting it, because you've built something far more valuable than money. But now, let me ask, what happens when influence doesn't just flow from you, but through you, shaping the environments and people around you? What happens when your influence shifts from being a source of personal gain to a source of collective growth? That's exactly where we're headed next. Let's talk about legacy, because legacy is not what you leave behind, it's what you build within others. It's not about the things you accumulate, but about the lives you touch and the impact you create that lasts beyond your time. Your legacy is your true wealth, and it doesn't die when you do. It lives on in the hearts, minds, and actions of the people who were changed because you existed. So ask yourself, what will people remember about you when you're gone? Will they remember the houses you built, the cars you drove, the money you made? Or will they remember the lives you transformed, the lessons you taught, the way you made them feel? Building a legacy starts with understanding one key truth. You are not just living for today, you are living for tomorrow. You are planting seeds today that will grow into trees that will shade future generations. And the beauty of legacy is this, it doesn't always show up immediately. Sometimes it takes years, decades, or even centuries for the true impact of your actions to unfold. But rest assured, it will unfold, it will endure. When you focus on building a legacy, you're no longer concerned with immediate gratification. You understand that your greatest success isn't measured by the paycheck you take home or the applause you receive. It's measured by the ripple effect you create. Every decision you make, every relationship you nurture, Every action you take should be focused on planting seeds for the future. And those seeds, they will grow long after you're gone. But here's the thing, legacy is deliberate. It doesn't happen by accident. You must intentionally position yourself to make the kind of impact that outlasts you. This means creating systems, ideas, and movements that can be carried on, amplified, and nurtured by others. It means sharing your knowledge, passing on your wisdom, and empowering those around you to continue what you've started. Think about the greatest leaders in history. Their names live on because they didn't just leave behind things. They left behind a movement, a vision, a set of values that continue to inspire, motivate, and guide future generations. Their legacy is in the lives they touched, the change they instigated, and the difference they made in the world. But legacy doesn't come from trying to be remembered by everyone. It comes from knowing who you're meant to influence and how you can serve them. You must create space for your legacy to thrive by surrounding yourself with those who align with your values, those who will carry your vision forward. This is not just about building something that lasts for you, but about building something that outlives you. And this brings us to the final piece of the puzzle. If you want to leave a true legacy, you must think about the world, not just as it is today, but as it will be when you're gone. What kind of world do you want to leave? What kind of future do you want to shape? Your legacy should be a reflection of the future you dream of, the future you believe in. And here's the key question. What happens when you realize that your legacy isn't something you leave, it's something you build every single day? What happens when you stop seeing your impact as temporary and start seeing it as eternal? That's the kind of legacy you were born to create. This isn't just a question of how much money you make, or the position you hold, or the titles you wear. No, this is the deep soul-searching question of how you view yourself, and how you allow the world to view you. When you define your own value, you give yourself the power to shape your future, to set your terms, and to never settle for anything less than the excellence you deserve. You see, the moment you allow someone else to define your value, you put yourself at the mercy of their standards, their perceptions, and their judgments. You become a reflection of what they think of you, instead of standing strong in what you know you are. But when you define your own value, when you know who you are, and what you bring to the table, you set your own worth, you decide your own boundaries, and you make it clear to the world that you are not an option, but a necessity. This is where your power lies. This is where your luxury begins. When you define your value, you stop chasing after validation, you stop waiting for permission, you stop allowing others to dictate your worth based on their limited perception. You know that you are more than what people see at surface level. You are more than the job you hold, or the title you wear. You are a unique creation with gifts, talents, and a purpose that cannot be replicated. Now, let me ask you, what would your life look like if you truly deeply believed that your value could never be questioned? How would your decisions change? How would your actions shift? How would your entire life transform if you understood that no one, not even the world, has the power to devalue you unless you give them permission? The key to living a life of luxury, of standing firm in your own worth, is this: you never settle, you never compromise on the standards you've set for yourself. You don't lower your expectations to match someone else's comfort zone. You don't shrink yourself to fit into spaces that were never meant for you. You rise to the level of your own potential, and you hold the line. And when you refuse to settle, something incredible happens. The world begins to take note. People will start to respect you, not because of how hard you fight to be seen, but because of the strength, confidence, and consistency you carry. They will see your value, because you are no longer allowing anyone to diminish. So now, I leave you with this. The question isn't whether the world will see you as valuable. The question is whether you will see yourself as valuable. The moment you define your worth, and refuse to settle for anything less than what you deserve, you will shift the entire trajectory of your life. The world doesn't get to decide your worth. You do. And once you understand this, once you embrace your inherent value and stand firm in it, there's no limit to what you can achieve. You will not just be seen as a luxury, you will be irreplaceable. And as you walk forward, remember this: the true power is not in what you get, but in who you become. The future is yours to shape. You've just unlocked the keys to make them see you for the luxury you truly are.